Every time the woman opens the curtains, there is always someone across the street watching her, once, twice, thrice, giving her a chilling sense that it's as if he's the Weber from the news. Weber has already killed 4 young girls in a row, and Julia herself is likely to be targeted by him. Terrified, Julia immediately tells her husband about it, but he dismisses her fears, suggesting that the person across the street might just be a mannequin. Julia tries to convince herself that her husband is simply offering some comfort, but her uneasy heart compels her to check out the situation. So she attempts to greet the person across the street, and to her surprise, he greets her back. How could a mannequin possibly greet someone? However, her husband is still at work, and Julia immediately thinks of Weber. She spends the night in fear, thinking she might be the 5th victim making headlines. Strangely, when the morning comes, Julia's husband still hasn't returned. Alone in a foreign country, unable to speak the language, and with a stranger watching her, Julia doesn't dare step outside. She waits anxiously for her husband to come back, but the hours stretch on. Night falls again, and her husband still hasn't returned, but she is greeted instead by a blanket of snow. Just as Julia tries to calm her nerves by watching the snow, she looks up and sees the watcher across the street again. She can't bear to stay in the house any longer. A woman's intuition is always the sharpest, and Julia feels that if she doesn't move soon, she could die. Late at night, her husband finally comes home. Julia tells him her worries, but he brushes her off, thinking she's just paranoid, and goes to sleep without saying much. The next morning, the news reports another murder, this time in the building next door. A single woman was assassinated in her home. The police suspect Weber is behind the murder, but the killer is still at large. At this point, Julia is too scared to stay at home any longer. After her husband leaves for work, she goes to a busy movie theater, thinking that staying in a crowd will keep her safe. However, she doesn't anticipate that a voyeur is also a stalker. Just as Julia begins to relax, she suddenly feels someone behind her, and instinctively, she feels that this person is familiar. Her heart races as she turns around, but she can't bring herself to look directly at him. She only notices his brown leather shoes and the cold, murderous intent emanating from him. Terrified, Julia runs. When she hides in a supermarket, she sees the brown leather shoes again. This time, she clearly sees the man's full appearance, slicked back hair, a green jacket, no signs of positive energy. He notices her as well. Realizing that Julia has been watching him, the man taps his shoes against the glass, sending a clear message: "I'm the one who's been following you at the movie theater."